Would you risk $4,000 to save 30 seconds at the pump? Thousands do. I'm exposing 10 refueling mistakes that wreck evap systems, flood cylinders, and spark fires. You'll get the don'ts, the correct nozzle sequence, and why topping off can void insurance claims. Stay to the end. The bonus mistake can cost $3,500, and 90% get it wrong. Let's dive in. Mistake number 10, not checking the fuel type. Nearly 20% of drivers have admitted to filling up their cars with the wrong fuel at least once. This is very common for drivers who have just switched to diesel or are using a rental. Still, this one mistake can cost you thousands in repairs. And no, your insurance won't cover it. Let's begin with the less severe one. Pouring diesel in a gas engine is a nightmare, but it is still redeemable. Diesel is a lot thicker than gas, so it doesn't ignite easily. The diesel will clog the spark plug and the fuel system, causing it to run rough or misfire. In most cases, the car could stall, and that's where the real danger is. That is why you should never drive a car with the wrong fuel. Forcing it to circulate through the car is the real problem. One guy was left with a jaw-dropping repair bill after their friend drove with the wrong fuel for 2 miles. That trip cost $2,600, and yes, the mechanic ripped them off. If you put diesel in a gas car, you need to drain it out immediately. The spark plugs and fuel pump will have to go. You might also need to clean the fuel injectors or just run gasoline through the engine a couple of times. It could still cost you about $1,500, but it's still a lot cheaper than trying to fix a diesel. Gasoline acts as a solvent in diesel engines, so it removes the lubrication that diesel provides in the injection system. Fuel pump, gone. Injectors, gone. And that's even before you drive it. The truck will start, but it will run rough and misfire. However, it will also overheat very quickly and seize, which can cost up to $10,000 to fix. Surprisingly, it's still not as expensive as the next mistake. Mistake number 9, leaving the engine on. Here is a very common phenomenon during winter. Up to 10% of drivers have admitted to leaving the engine running because they didn't want the inside of the car to get too cold. If you live in the Salt Belt, I get it. However, all you're doing is risking one type of heat for another, deadlier one. Gasoline vapors are highly flammable, and a running engine has numerous ignition sources. Hot exhausts, electrical sparks, you get the idea? Just one small spark can turn your car into a fireball. That's why it is illegal in most states to leave your car running while refueling. That is also why the F1 banned mid-race refueling in 2010. Even though it still happens at other races like NASCAR, pit crews wear fuel-proof suits. Still, fires from running engines are rare. What's more likely is that you could confuse the car's ECU. Modern vehicles have evaporative emission control systems to monitor fuel vapors. When you run the car while refueling, it can confuse the system and cause a check engine light. You could see a code like P0456, which is for a small evap leak. However, small leaks are big business. Dealers charge up to $3,500 to repair this. So, while leaving your engine might not combust, you could still set money on fire. What's more likely to leave you with third-degree burns is the next mistake. Mistake number 8, not grounding yourself. There are over 4,000 fire incidents around service stations and gas stations every year. 200 of these used to be caused by something people never see coming. Static electricity. Cars generate static electricity through friction between the tires and the road. They also generate static from you rubbing on your seats. If that comes into contact with gas vapors, it can cause a serious fire. That is why the Petroleum Equipment Institute launched the Stop Static campaign a few decades ago. Back then, there used to be over 100 incidents each year of mild to severe fires that destroyed cars and gas stations. Sadly, there were also a few casualties. Modern cars now rely on the EVAP system to absorb a lot of that vapor when you're fueling. This has reduced the number of these incidents to barely a handful every few years. However, you don't want to be the one in a million it happens to. There are 3 major ways to prevent static electricity fires. The first is to turn off your engine. The second is not to go inside your vehicle while refueling, as you can carry some of that static charge with you. Third, ground yourself before touching the fuel pump. All you need to do is touch a metallic surface like the side of your car or the roof before touching the pump. Fortunately, most people do this automatically as they come out of their vehicles. Stick with these habits, especially during winter or dry seasons, and your car won't turn into ash. Up next is another mind slip that can leave you with thousands in repairs. Mistake number 7. Putting the wrong ethanol blend. So, you go to the pump and grab the cheapest one, ignoring the big fat yellow label. It just happens to be E85, and you think you're about to slash your fuel cost by 20 to 30%. What you've done instead is signed the death warrant for your engine. If you had to choose between putting diesel in a gas car and putting E85 in a non-flex fuel car, pour the diesel. Every car built after 2001 is equipped to handle E10, which is 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline. However, only flex fuel cars can handle E15 or E85. The reason is that ethanol is a solvent and it's hygroscopic, which creates 2 very expensive problems. High concentrations of ethanol dissolve non-resistant rubber and plastic, causing fuel leaks in different parts of the fuel system. This creates a serious fire hazard because you don't want fuel leaking on hot engine components at highway speeds. But even before the leaks, your engine will begin to run rough and could stall. That's because ethanol has a lower energy density than gasoline, so it doesn't flow as easily through fuel injectors. It can also lead to overheating, blown head gaskets, and damaged pistons. Now, because ethanol is hygroscopic, it attracts water that can corrode metallic components. Luckily, most fuel tanks are now made from high-density polyethylene, or HDPE, basically plastic. However, if you have a steel tank, you're looking at over $2,000 in damages. That is why you shouldn't leave fuel in your car for weeks without being used. If you must, fill it up to the brim or use an additive. We cover a few of them in this video. 13 fuel additives mechanics don't want you to know. As a bonus, ethanol confuses oxygen sensors, which also causes incorrect air-fuel ratio readings. The bottom line is that this innocent mistake will cost you at least $5,000 in repairs. And if you own a car made before 2001, even E10 fuel will turn your car into junk. But as stupid as this might seem, the following one takes the prize. Mistake number 6, smoking or using open flames at the pump. You would think that there's nobody dumb enough to make this mistake, but you'd be wrong. According to the National Fire Protection Association, smoking materials account for roughly 3% of fires around gas stations. This figure amounts to roughly 120 fires per year because someone refused to use their common sense. Gas stations are very strict with keeping smokers away from the pumps. However, that doesn't prevent drivers from sneaking behind the building. The NFPA data shows that the fires originate from the external trash disposal areas of gas stations. Fortunately, this is typically far away from where the gas vapors are. Still, this causes an average of 1 civilian death, 3 injuries, and $7.6 million in direct property damage. Earlier this year, a man was arrested in Virginia for smoking within 20 feet of a gas pump. The flames burnt a car to a crisp, while also causing significant damage to a Shell petrol station. Now, let's debunk one of the most misleading refueling myths, mistake number 5. Using your cell phone while refueling. A shocking 40% of drivers believe that using a cell phone at a gas station can cause an explosion. They believe that the electromagnetic radiation from a phone can ignite gasoline vapors, which will cause an explosion. Many experiments have been conducted to test it out, including by Mythbusters and Surprise. It is in fact a myth. The Federal Trade Commission, the Petroleum Equipment Institute, and the National Fire Protection Association have also debunked it. So, why is this myth lingering? Probably because of the no cell phone signs in gas stations. However, those signs are there to prevent drivers from being distracted. The first problem for other drivers is time wastage. The average gas station visit takes about 20 minutes. This can easily increase to half an hour when people are distracted. What's worse is that staying on your phone is how people end up pouring the wrong type of fuel. That means gasoline and diesel engines, E85 and non-flex fuel cars, and something much worse, which we're about to get into. Mistake number 4, putting DEF in the diesel tank or vice versa. Since 2018, every new vehicle sold in Europe has been required to label the gas cap for diesel labeling. Diesel exhaust fluid caps started even earlier than that, in 2010. This simple change was mandated by the EPA to prevent very expensive fueling errors. Unfortunately, many people still screw this up. So, what happens when you mistakenly pour DEF into the diesel tank? DEF is a non-toxic fluid made of 32.5% urea and 67.5% deionized water. This high concentration of water contaminates the diesel fuel system. If you start the engine, the DEF will crystallize and corrode the fuel pump, injectors, and lines. This will require a completely fuel system replacement. Depending on the type and size of the vehicle, this can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000. The alternative is almost as bad. Pouring diesel into the DEF tank will contaminate the selective catalytic reduction system. You'd need to replace the DEF tank, pump, and injector, and you'd also need a new catalytic converter. In all, you're still looking at roughly $5,000. Fortunately, the second mistake is not as common due to the small filler necks of DEF tanks. Unless you're really distracted, it would be difficult to put diesel in the DEF tank. Sadly, the first one is more common. If you realize that you've put DEF in the diesel tank, don't switch the vehicle on. Get it towed to a shop immediately. If you don't drive a diesel, you're not off the hook entirely, especially if you drive a luxury vehicle. Mistake number 3, using the wrong octane rating. Approximately 16 million Americans use premium fuel when their car does not recommend it. This equates to $2.1 billion wasted and possibly billions more spent on unnecessary repairs. But do you know what's worse? The several thousand who don't use premium fuel when they should? But I'll get to that shortly. Premium implies higher quality, which is why many people make this mistake. However, when it refers to fuel, it simply means gas with the highest octane rating. Regular gas has an 87 octane rating, mid-grade is 89 to 90, and premium is 91 to 94. High-octane fuel is recommended for high-performance cars or high-compression engines like turbochargers and superchargers. That's because the higher the octane rating, the more pressure the gasoline can endure without detonating. These engines are more prone to pinging, also known as detonation or knocking, due to the excessive pressure they create. High compression engines generate a lot of heat and pressure that can cause the air-fuel mixture to detonate before the spark plug fires. This creates a shock wave that can be heard as a metallic ping. Repeated pinging can cause overheating, piston damage, and cracked cylinders. When you put premium gas when regular is needed, your engine won't ping. However, it wouldn't ping with regular gas anyway, so all you're doing is wasting money. The real danger is when you pour regular gas into a premium engine. In just a few minutes, your engine could ping enough to cause catastrophic engine failure. The safest thing to do is to shut off the engine and have your vehicle towed. Otherwise, you are risking a complete engine rebuild. If you're driving something fancy like a Corvette, a new engine can cost up to $15,000. And sadly, most warranties and insurers don't cover it. If you drive a regular car, you could still experience engine knock if you ignore the next tip. Mistake number 2, neglecting scheduled fuel system servicing. Even if your fueling habits are flawless, what you do in between is just as important. Over time, carbon builds up in fuel injectors and cylinder walls. If you drive a car with a GDI engine, you could see severe carbon buildup on intake valves after 10,000 miles. The point of fuel system servicing is to ensure that these parts stay clean. Otherwise, you'll face very expensive repairs. When there is carbon buildup on cylinder walls, it can cause detonation, which can destroy your engine. This will set you back between $3,000 and $8,000 for most cars. Carbon deposits also affect combustion, which leads to plenty of unburnt fuel that finds its way to the catalytic converter. That replacement will cost you another $2,000 on average. Some dealers charge up to $3,500 for this. If the fuel injector gets clogged, it will affect fuel delivery. This will create a lean condition, resulting in reduced power, rough idling, and stalling. Over time, this can also cause overheating, melted pistons, or damaged spark plugs. Again, this will mean a new engine. To prevent these unnecessary repairs, replace the fuel filter as recommended in your manual. This is often every 20,000 to 50,000 miles. If your car claims to have a lifetime filter, find out what the OEM says. Lifetime typically means 100,000 miles, so be certain. If you have a GDI, you would need professional cleaning, like walnut blasting. Regrettably, this is expensive and can cost up to $1,000, but it saves you more money than it costs. But do you know what doesn't save you money? The next dumb mistake. Mistake number 1, waiting until the tank is empty. Here's another tip that is beneficial, but not in the way people expect. Many believe you should never drive with the fuel gauge under a quarter tank. The concern is that the fuel pump will begin to suck in dirt and debris at the bottom of the fuel tank, which will destroy the engine or affect performance. That doesn't make any mechanical sense. To begin with, fuel filters don't let debris like rust flow into the engine. Older cars used to have a primary and secondary filter. The primary filter removes larger particles from 50 to 7 microns in water. The secondary filter then drops it down to 2 microns. Modern fuel filters often combine both, which makes it hard for harmful particles to contaminate the engine. Secondly, your car performs the same way whether there is very little fuel or a lot. Thirdly, the fuel pump is located at the bottom of the tank, and it only pulls fuel from the bottom anyway. That means if there's any debris, it should go in first, even when the tank is empty. The reason why you shouldn't wait too long is that it can damage the fuel pump. The pump relies on gasoline to keep it lubricated due to the amount of heat it generates. If the pump isn't immersed in enough fuel, which can be an eighth or a quarter tank, that will overheat and fail. If you let the tank run low a couple of times, it's not a problem. However, if you're constantly doing it, you will need a new pump soon. After you've done everything right, there's just one more thing you need to do. Bonus tip: replace the gas cap properly. This simple mistake can cost you a few $100s per year. According to the Department of Transportation, you could lose 30 gallons per year from fuel vapors escaping a loose gas cap. However, that's not what you should be worried about. The gas cap is a critical part of the evap system, so your car will always throw a code when it's loose. If you see codes like P0457, P0456, P0442, or P0455, it means there is an evap leak. Like I mentioned before, dealers use these codes to bilk clients out of thousands of dollars. So, whenever you fill up the tank, turn the gas cap until you hear it click a few times. This simple twist will keep fuel in your car, reduce emissions, and save you a boatload of money. Now, you know what to do before and immediately after refueling to protect your car and other motorists from deadly or expensive mistakes. However, none of this will matter if you buy fuel from the wrong gas station. Watch this video to uncover some shocking gas station secrets. Never use these 11 gasoline brands and 5 that protect engine.